Hello and welcome to the first of a two-part preview of the 2026 Monster Energy AMA Supercross Series, the 450 SX class specifically. This is the regular post-race show, of course, but we are looking ahead to the 2026 season, and there are just too many guys to fit into one single podcast. So we're going to basically take the 450 field, cut it in two. This time, we'll be focusing on the former champions, former winners, title contenders, the top-heavy episode, you could call this. And then in the second part, we'll get to the Faulkner, the Jordans, the Barshas, the Ferrandeses, all of that good stuff. For now, that's our plan. Thank you for listening. The vibes and the excitement for Anaheim 1 are truly hitting peak level now. Wouldn't you agree, Michael Lindsay?
Absolutely. And I hate to say that that's partially about the first subject with Jet being out, but it does, in a sense, blow us a little more wide open where this conversation would have been a little bit more straightforward if Jet were in the field. Not to say that anything is guaranteed, but it's really, I hate it for Jet, but in the same breath, it has created an extremely interesting 2026 on paper, especially as we get into it with the ages, the careers, the stats behind the guys that will go for the titles and the storylines that wrap in each one. Like I said, on paper heading into it, it's one of the most excited I've been for a Supercross season for about as long as I can remember. I'm flashing back to my RV James Stewart Reed days of excitement.
Yeah, let's just make it clear off the top. Jet Lawrence is out. That was announced on Saturday. Saturday just gone. He has fractured his talus and his navicular, and the PR stated that he will be out for a minimum of 3 months, although that is until the earliest he can possibly get back on a bike. So he is a non-factor in the 2026 Monster Energy AMA Supercross Series, and it's important to reference the fact that if he was healthy, he would be both of our favourites, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's out of the way. Now everyone knows where we stood pre-Jet injury. Let's get into where we stand post-Jet injury. Who is now your favourite? Do you have a clear favourite? How do you view the very, very top of the title discussion?
Hold on. My screen is messy. Anyways, Cooper Webb. I think when we just break it down to title favorite, at least my opinion, again, Webb is somebody that even in his defense years has been highly overlooked. The years he comes back and wins the titles, highly overlooked. It's a continuous theme. Slowly, the last couple years, I think he's chipped away at people doubting him. But I think this is the first time that most people to confidently say, like, he has to be your title favorite with Jet out of the picture. Everybody else he's racing, he has beaten for a championship, and he knows how to beat them for a championship. So if you're Cooper Webb, you've got the RV meme going right now.
But the new bike doesn't worry you at all? Because I think if Webb was rolling over his 24-25 setup, which again, he has said many a time, that he has never changed because he loved it and it was the most amazing, comfortable package he's had. If he was on that, I think he is my clear favourite. But I do look at the new bike basically as good as a team change.
Oh, wow. That's extreme. I mean, yes, the bike is different in terms of the frame, but it's a pretty minor overhaul. From a production standpoint, what we deal with, yeah, it's a huge difference because of the engine changes. They can scrap all that and pretty much will for their program. And if they really are hung up the next week or two, as I've said on prior pods, just put the old frame back on. If I was Webb, that would be the ultimate thing this week. Just put the old frame back on. Let's go racing. It's not a team change, Lewis. Come on.
Well, yeah, but you're saying you've been stuck in California all winter. Paris, OzX, media days, like, it's not minor because he's referencing it at every opportunity and repeatedly. Like, Paris, he was talking about struggles. In OzX, he was talking about the same struggles. And then 2-3 weeks later, he's still talking about the same struggles. So it doesn't seem like, as far as mid-December, it was necessarily fixed per se. So
or does he want you to buy into that?
Well, that is actually a very good point, and that is entirely possible.
If it was about any other rider, I would wholeheartedly take their concerns in check very carefully. With Webb, I just never know.
I think it's as good as a team change when you are in Webb's position and you were so in love with the previous package because you idolize that, you romanticize that, you look at that and you didn't want it to leave. I think that can maybe play on your mind more than if you're in Chase's position, for instance, and you wanted to leave and you wanted something new. So if you're in Chase's position, you're romanticizing what's coming up, whereas if you're in Webb's position, you're maybe romanticizing what's in the past. And I would argue that of that little game, I don't know what Tomac is romanticizing. Maybe both? I don't know.
Like I said, and maybe it doesn't happen, but I will say if it's whether it happens preseason, whether it happens in season, if they really hit a wall with Webb on setup, it is a very easy change for them to go back. It is extremely easy for them to go back. So I lie in that. That's why partially I say that. Sorry, that's why I lean on the title contender. Number one, I mean, back to again the fact that he has beat every one of these guys. He is one of the best versions we've seen of him. However, as we also know, he's never defended. But even, Chase has a team change. Eli has a team change. You want to say, yes, Webb has equal to a team change, but he's also the only one of those three that can take a step back and revert everything if push comes to shove. It is within their power, within their ability, they can do it. So maybe they don't take that option. I'm just saying it's there, so that at least gives me a fallback form of the one red flag I want to wave for him can be taken out of the picture very quickly.
Yeah, and if Tomac red flag is waving, they can just roll out a Yamaha and put orange plastic on it, and there we go. I think another very important factor to consider with Webb's title defense and his title odds is January is irrelevant. Never won Anaheim 1, of course, won other Anaheims at different points. But even last year, Anaheim 2 was his worst result of the season by far. I still remember interviewing him, surprisingly, after that race and him just being lost and dejected and basically not looking like a rider that was going to go on a tear, overcome a deficit and win the championship. So Webb is definitely, at minimum, equal favourite for me. And that will not change through January, no matter what happens, because I am almost expecting Webb to leave January behind at least one of his title foes. I think that's a fair prediction.
I agree. That's the other thing I have as a note. We'll get to it with Rocks and Riders. There's other riders that I'm basing the first 4 or 5 rounds means I feel like more to a championship run where, yeah, Coop, the old saying, the series doesn't start till Daytona thing fits one of the best with him until we especially get out of the opening 6. Like once we get to Arlington and heading to Daytona is where either I will be, more I'll start to lean into that Coop narrative or start to hit the sirens, the panic button if something's going on. But like I said, unless it's horrendous, the first 4, 5, 6 rounds with Webb, as long as he stays in there, and that's maybe that's the time he uses to figure out the new chassis. Like I said, there's been years where he's been in it, or is one where he's personally sounds lost or frustrated at the beginning of the season, but he just brings it all back together. Where who else on that narrative? Who else are you not worried about across the opening couple rounds? As long as it's not disastrous, who else doesn't ring an alarm for you?
To be honest, with Jet gone, I feel like everyone can now afford to maybe start a little bit slower. There's less pressure on the first couple of rounds for that reason. I think with Jet there, Jet wins Anaheim 1. If you're one of these riders and you are just 3 or 5 points behind, I think that's already oh my God, we're already at a deficit. This is already slipping. Whereas I think, and this again comes down to what you said where Webb knows he can beat the other guys. I think Chase knows it or thinks that he can beat the other guys. I think Tomac thinks that he can beat the competitors as well. So I think that they are all maybe going to be a little bit more okay, can kind of change the attack a little bit now, take a time a little bit, obviously not ride around in 13th place, of course. But I do think it maybe cuts some of the tension and the intensity from the first, I would say the West Coast swing, but that is extremely long this year. The first couple of weeks, let's say the Southern California swing.
Yeah. Well, and I think a common theme we've seen in the last year or two is also across these opening 6, I take, whether we're talking about Ken Roczen, Eli Tomac, Chase Sexton, Cooper Webb, Hunter Lawrence, a handful of these guys, there will be very interchangeable results. I would be pretty shocked to see somebody come out on a tear because, again, the pressure maybe isn't as high as when Jet's in the field to lock it down early and make sure he doesn't grab a points lead. Like you said, a lot of these guys can afford a 3rd, a 5th, a 6th place night. And we've seen it a lot more last years where almost every week, doing this podcast is very tough to label a title favorite as the percentages change episode to episode because it can swing so much in the opening 4 to 6 rounds before a trend starts to appear again. Because ultimately in the Daytona thing, once we get into East Coast, once it starts to settle down, you start to see a trend.
Speaking of trends, that Anaheim 2 ride in 2025 of Webb's, which was his worst of a season, as I mentioned, 8th place on that night, the only night of the season where he was outside of the top 4, which is ultimately the championship playbook. If you can string together a season like that, the only way you can be beat is by outright dominance. So that, again, with Jet gone, I would think that is going to be the path for the eventual champion. Whoever maybe wins the most races or is in that vortex, but whoever remains consistent, has the most podiums, I think that will be the critical statistic. Even the most top 5s, I think, will loom larger than the most wins in the 2026 Supercross season. And on that subject, I pulled these numbers a minute ago, and I always struggle with how far back to go when you want to look at, say, career stats or whatever else, because all of these riders have been racing in the 450 class for different times, and therefore their averages and whatever else are skewed. So I thought that this would be fair. Taking each rider's, and I'm pulled the 5 title contenders, which I think will agree it's the same group. I've pulled their last 50 starts respectively. So not the last 50 rounds, the last 50 main events where they have each started, and looked at the number of podiums they've had in those 50 starts. So coming in at the top is Chase with 33 of 50. Which I think sounds about right. Maybe a little bit higher than I would have imagined, but not too unbelievable. Second, Webb, 31 to 50, so effectively the same. Truth be told, I think I felt like Webb was going to far win this little category, so maybe I expected that to be a little bit higher. And then, again, very close behind, Tomac, 28 to 50. Which again is maybe higher than I expected, because that 2023 season is a little while ago now, and we know 2024 1 win, 2025 barely raced. And then Hunter, Roxon, 20 of 50, so that kind of paints an accurate picture, I feel. And then Hunter hasn't even raced 50, which also paints a rather accurate picture. But from those, I think my takeaway is it's pretty much a toss-up. Yep. They're all kind of in the same window, at least as far as the top 3 go.
Well, I think when you say the surprising, not surprising, the Chase stat does not shock me whatsoever. Webb's podium mount, you said you thought it'd be higher. It doesn't shock me it's less than Chase's. It does shock me it's actually as close. And the reason I say that is a note you have already mentioned is you were talking about last season, Webb only finishing outside the top 4 one time. When I think of Webb, the fact that he's on par basically with Chase on podiums, I think plays into Webb's into Webb's chance for a title very high, because again, his bad nights are not that bad. You go outside of some of those results with Chase and they can be, I hate to say it, disastrous, where Webb rarely has a true disastrous night. And that's where I think it comes back to, I'm interested to see ultimately whoever our titleist ends up being this year in the 450 class is how they get there. Because we've talked about this in year past. You always know that Webb is going to get it done in consistency, striking when the time is right, striking when it's within his hands, but never throwing it away when it's not. Where he kind of has, I hate to say, like one path to victory, kind of the way he races, where Chase could go either way. Chase could find form and become dominant and reel off win after win and build points gaps that way, or he could find consistency. We've seen a little both from him over time, and Eli has done a little both over time. But again, you mentioned before, ultimately you think the rider that'll win this title will be the most consistent across the board, but that's Webb's MO. The other guys kind of could go either direction.
Just a little refresher and a little bit of a lesson, if you will. As we said, Webb was out of the top 4 once in 2025. Chase was out of the top 4 4 times, with a 6th, a 5th, a 5th, and a 6th. And funnily enough, it was Webb who had the lowest low with the 8th in Anaheim too.
Really?
Which again is a little bit of wouldn't have thought that. I mean, it was only a couple of months ago, but I barely remember, and I wouldn't have put money on that, no matter how much You wanted to maybe talk me out of it. So I don't know what that does for the title picture, but I think what I am clear on is, and I think Webb would agree with this, he is far more of a factor pre-season with Jet out than with Jet in. And equally, I think that this takes a lot of the pressure off of Kawasaki and Chase and that partnership, because I think the odds of this going well, and that's kind of a loose term, I don't necessarily mean championship or most wins, but now you kind of can bet that Chase is going to get a healthy number of wins, and even if he doesn't win the title, it won't be a downgrade, let's say, from years past.
Yeah.
Whereas with Jet out there, I think there was more of a possibility that Chase gets 1 or 2 wins maybe, and everyone's maybe sounding the fire alarm as far as Kawasaki goes. So I think that both riders benefit from this in different ways.
I agree with that. We talked about it a little bit even going into the season or a couple months ago at some point when we've talked about the team changes. It kind of comes up to the Prado Sexton comparison, Kawi versus KTM. And I've said this before, like even also coming off some of that narrative being involved, as long as Chase pulls out 4 or 5 wins over the season, even if he gets, say it's second in the championship, I think it still is a very successful first run for Kawasaki. And I think some people view that as such, where if he had stayed at KTM, of course, that would be somewhat of a repeat of last year. And for many would be considered, a missed opportunity. I also do agree with you, because if you have Jet and Chase both in the field, you're looking for wins no matter what out of Chase. You just know his raw speed, you know his capabilities. So without a Jet in the field, Chase automatically comes down as the guy you expect to get the most wins. And without Jet in the field, it gives him a much better opportunity of claiming that crown. People will look at the whole relationship in first year very positively. Hopefully him and the team take it as such, regardless of what the final outcome ends up being in the point standings.
I'll do this really quickly because this would be irrelevant but interesting. If Chase had re-signed with KTM, how do you look at 2026 Supercross as different, or do you view it differently?
Yes and no. Yes, because he was so close to the championship against Webb last year. We could easily frame up 1 or 2 races where you could say let it go. I would think if he's on KTM re-signs, this exact situation happens, I actually would say that Chase, I would slightly bump Chase as the title favorite over Webb, because I would say he's been there. He knows the 1 or 2 wrongs he needs to fix to make this happen, and it's well within his grasp, where the team change, slightly bumps that back for me, where I nudge Webb as my clear-cut favorite.
Interesting. And let us know in the comments what you would do in that situation, because I think that is quite an interesting hypothetical, because everyone knows that Chase was so keen to get off of KTM, but actually, would it have been the best place for him all along? What a profound point, just 18 minutes into the podcast. And we'll get all of these answers in just a couple of weeks. That's what's so exciting. So I don't think we really did this, but you are putting Webb first as the favourite and all of that.
Yep.
I go back and forth. The safe, boring answer, I think, is to put Webb and Chase equal, which is boring, I think.
Can you not be boring?
Well, I don't know. Is it boring, though? Like, I think that is my 1A and 1B.
But who's 1A? Even 1A states something.
I think Webb.
Okay.
Which is a massive moment for the entire community that there's preview shows going on, whether it's ours or others, and people are saying Webb. It's really earth-shattering.
Again, even the years he has held the title before, would you say he's ever been looked at this much as a title favorite? No. As the title favorite.
Maybe 2020, actually. Maybe 2020, because there would have been a certain amount of hype after his first championship. Everyone would have presumed he would keep getting better and be on the incline. Although this is, again, an important point to mention, never defended. In fact, I thought this was quite cool. None of our current champions have ever defended.
It's actually, I love the poetry of this with Webb. So if Webb wins, of course, it will be his first title defense. It will be his 4th title. That will put him on par with, RV and Dungey, correct? With 4 Supercross titles each. And it's also a bit because the last people to defend titles, correct me if I'm wrong, are Dungey and Villo, both defended titles. And nobody has defended a Supercross title since then. So for Webb, as I said, Ian will get to with each rider, there is a beautiful bit of storyline that will come with it if they take the title, and that's Webb's putting himself on the mantle, tied it for each with the RV and RD, with the only two people above him, then being directly Carmichael and McGrath to do it this late in his career to finally get a title defense. I mean, it puts Webb in it. The three and the way he did it put him in rare air. Four puts him in real rare air, and I think it would finally, for the few people out there that maybe are still not putting respect on Webb's name, it would have to. It becomes a little bit undeniable at that point.
I would agree. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, and I mentioned this on the Media Days podcast, he did mention that he has some PTSD from his last title defense and how that was a new KTM. This is a new Yamaha. That equally is a very funny situation, like that we've ended up in exactly the same merry-go-round, and adds a level of complexity to the poetry that you mentioned, because if it doesn't go well again, I think that's quite crazy and mind-rattling a little bit. Anything else on Chase or Webb, or should we move on? Or
small one to tackle with Chase. Now, ultimately, if he does, it's a little bit more of a negative conversation. I hate to say it, but if he ultimately comes up short to Webb again, looking at the titles that Chase should have won so far, does this start to worry you with him a little bit long term? If he ultimately comes down to the wire with a Webb and it just doesn't end up getting the job done?
I don't know what the worry would be long term, but if he does lose the championship in a similar fashion to last year, or this year, I guess still currently, yes, I would think that would weigh heavily. And more than anything else, just from an optics point of view, it's massive missed opportunities. Because realistically, he shoulda, coulda, woulda been the champion in 25, and he could and should, we don't know if woulda yet, in 2026. So there are no excuses. And I think I would say the same about Webb heading into 2026. There are no excuses, despite the internal changes on both sides. I think that both riders, if you put a lie detector test on them and said, are you ready to win this championship? They would say yes, and it would beep in the green, correct manner. But yeah, this is an open door, an open goal, whatever you want to call it, for Chase and the others. But I think Chase more so just because the Jet and Chase rivalry is so prominent, and Eli and Cooper had their chance without Jet. Whereas Chase, okay, he had a small window there, but not as prominent as the other two.
Well, let's do the window without Jet really quick before we move on to the next one. We both said we weren't going to talk too much about the Jet situation, but there is one thing I'm curious to get your thoughts on, or see how striking it is to you, is the window without him. You know, I think when he first went 450 and we saw immediate dominance, there was a lot of people like, well, here we go. Here's the next decade, basically. Like, finding other champions are going to be tough. It's going to take an injury year, an issue. Sadly, those have actually become more common in the short term than we expected. If you're not as much your Eli and your Kenny, because they're so close. I know they get sick of hearing close to the end, but they are theoretically close to the end of their careers. But for Webb, they'll probably hang out a bit longer. Your Chase, some of the guys incoming. There's got to be a part of it where seeing these back-to-back injuries with Jet has to change your perspective on the future.
Yeah, you can't miss 2 years of Supercross and jump right back in where you left off. I'm very, very adamant about that. And yes, Jet is phenomenal. And yes, of course, he will get there. But I think that fast forward to the 2027 preview, I think that the headline is, you've got to expect Jet to start slow because of the time missed. And therefore, that will be another open goal of sorts, a much smaller one and a much harder one to capitalize on, but still more open than it would have been if Jet had never had this injury, which again, Vitalis Navicular have plagued some riders quite severely, and it's one of those horror stories in the paddock, both in MXGP and America, where riders have recovered, but they kind of still complain of nagging and whatever else. Yes. A massive blow for Jet. I think when he tore his ACL, the headline was, he needs a break. This will be good in the long run. This is actually a benefit rather than to his detriment. I think none of that can be applied on this occasion. And I think if anyone tried to, that's far too optimistic thinking. So on to Tomac. Sorry.
I was going to say, and then there's the last part, though, is also the statistically going forward, just the more common it's becoming. again, some of these guys opens the door more down the road. Like you cannot guarantee now that Jet will just continue to be there.
Yeah, no, that's a
Like
very good point because I think
that's the biggest one.
Jet
In
is
my
so
opinion.
perfect that we all just presume there's not going to be this massive moment. And I think that is still true. It doesn't sound like the crash was a massive crash, but still, it doesn't quite add up how he's getting hurt so much. It's very, people are going to hate me saying this, it's a very similar career to Hurling's now at this point, where when he's there, you can't beat him, but weird stuff's happening. I mean, I've said it a million times. Hurling's never has big crashes. But stuff happens, and we're kind of starting to apply the same narrative to Jet, although hopefully it's a spell rather than a career-long detriment.
Well, again, I think somebody the long term, when he first came into the 450 class, or even before he did, it was a lot of us were labeling it potentially the him and Sexton show going forward. And based off the initial results, you think, okay, no, Sexton may get overshadowed long term during his career by Jet. But now if you're Chase, I mean, Chase has proven he can. Chase gets hurt every once in a while, but he's proven he can hit the ground like a sack of rocks and keep moving. And like I said, Jet, like you look on paper, if you had videos of all of them, like Chase's crashes, if you showed it to somebody who knows nothing about moto, they'd be like, that man's hurt. You show him some of Jet's and they'd be like, nah, he's fine.
It's a Geyser Hurlings situation.
Yeah.
Really is. You've got
it really is. Geyser does have.
Yeah, you've got your Geyser to your Hurlings in America now. It's beautiful. Poetry once more. On to Tomac. I want you to lead off on this because, truth be told, I'm already seeing it in the universe. The Tomac fan base are chomping at the bit. They're ready. This is their moment. So I want you to start, and then we'll build from your initial Tomac take. Now, let me preface this with this. Webb and Chase are my 1A and 1B. Tomac is not my 1C. Over to you.
No, I agree with that. He is a step below in terms of title favorite. I think it's interesting because, again, back to romanticizing what a title can do for somebody. I think Eli's fan base, of course, has grown massively the last couple of years. He's the all-American guy. He gets it done. A lot of people like his persona, that he's not that flashy. There's a lot of things about him he's not really, he doesn't put himself out there, but his fan base just continues to grow and people get behind him and he's become the elder statesman. I think people love could have gone out on top, but just keeps coming back for one more storyline. So I get why people are very behind it. I get that people are like, oh, they want to basically see him switch to the OEM. They never thought he'd basically race and get it done one more time. However, and I've always been a pretty big Eli proponent on these pods. I take a step back, and of all the possibilities for championships, I feel like if Eli were to get it done, it almost means the least amount to me of everybody that can get one. And what I mean by that is his legacy is already so solid. I don't feel like this is a make or break in any way that really affects his long-term legacy.
Well,
if that makes sense.
That is the politician answer of how you don't anger the fan base. Yep, copy and paste that for me. If he doesn't win this, then who cares? Because he's already an all-time great. He doesn't even need to be out there. What a man! What a legend! What a man! I'm very impressed. Honestly, I'm very impressed by that because even I started to buy into it, and then I twigged that actually you were just kind of buttering up the fan base before saying that you don't think he's going to win.
I don't think so. I think it's. With Eli is actually of this entire title group we will talk about, he's the biggest mystery to me. He is the one that I feel like I will focus the most on week in and week out on his results and see the trends. Like I will probably over hyperanalyze everything he does, but he is kind of under the spotlight based on how the last couple of years have gone. Him going from the Cowie Eli of weird, where there was the hit or miss, to being so solid at one point at Yamaha, to the injuries coming around and having the hit or miss just moments, the nights where the results are practically unexplainable. It will put him under the microscope, which kind of also sucks in what potentially, we go back to this, potentially could be his final year because he is on a 1-year contract. It'll get to a point where some people, the fan base will get mad because we'll probably hyperanalyze what's going on with him. But it's also just kind of part of the position he's put himself in based on his performances, based on just everything. But it's part of what makes his potential title run interesting is the fact that like I said, we'll just be staring at every weekend, waiting to see what happens, waiting to see which Eli shows up on the weekend, waiting to see how the adaptation period goes. Can he fix the bad races, the bike setup, all the things?
Yeah, and critically, to add on to your point, yes, I'm sure we will all hyperfixate on what Eli's doing, but to make matters worse, we're also going to hyperfixate on what KTM is doing. So there's double the spotlight after the KTM gremlins and discussions about shock issues and whatever else. Even if Eli was kind of a sure thing, we're then focusing on the KTM. So there's double the spotlight, double the scrutiny, double all of that stuff, which will fuel Eli discussion for 17 rounds. But yeah, it's important. It's important to mention that, of course, he's going to win a race, multiple races. Of course, he will be a factor. I don't know. You know what? Now that I think about it, I don't know why I don't have him 1A and 1B. 2 wins in his last 25 starts. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know if I have faith in him and the KTM gelling each and every week. I think that would be it. Mm-hmm. Whereas again, going back to what we said about Webb and Chase at the top, I think Chase is so romanticizing this switch that mentally he'll almost like overlook some of the gremlins because he'll be like, oh, well, I'm so happy to be here and I'm just so glad I made this decision. Whereas maybe that will be harder. I think that's also harder to do the older you get. So maybe that also means that it'll be difficult for Tomac to do that, and he'll be more reactive to not being comfortable or there being a slight problem or not being able to figure something out.
I agree with that, and I still just go back to it. This would be different if it was maybe flashback to an Eli versus a little bit younger, like a different point in Eli's career where he's been able to have the swings and performances and still get the job done. I just go back to Webb and knows how to get it done, particularly against an Eli that falls into that category. Eli will, like I said, Chase probably of the group has the highest opportunity to go on win streaks or high amount of wins to pull in points where Eli needs to do his best, probably Cooper Webb impression to get it done, because unless lightning strikes again twice with him in the sense of he rebursts the part of his career where win streaks are common, like he can't just rely on big performances to pull this in. I don't think he'll have enough of them.
Yeah, that's another great point. If Webb's greatest attribute is consistency, racecraft, Chase's is speed and ability to maybe win the most races. I don't know what Eli's is against. I guess Eli's would be potentially, you would say, the ability to combine both of those in a way that the other two can't.
Yeah. You could look at it as like Eli can touch the raw momentum and raw pace that a Chase has on any given night. Eli is absolutely one of the best we've ever seen to do it. But he also has all the age and title experience to also know how to be consistent when it counts. So really his top path is combining a little bit of both, best of both worlds, which I would argue is a little tougher. If you're again, Coop, you have your game plan, your way you get it done. Chase kind of has that, and Eli has to kind of mold it all together while dealing again with an OEM change and age and multiple other things. Like, it will be a tough one. I'll be curious again. I go back to if the rider pulls it off. I would imagine even without Janet, Eli would potentially at the end of the year say this is probably the toughest one if he does pull it off, depending how it plays out.
How many race wins do you think he'll get, and how many does he need to get for it to be considered a success?
I think he will get 2 race wins, and I think 2 is enough to also consider it a success.
Yeah, I would agree with the latter. I think that once he gets 1 win, then all questions like, yep, brilliant, box ticked. I think the 1 win is critical, and also the same for Chase and Webb and Roxon, etc. It's kind of how it goes with everyone. I was going to say 2, 3, 4 wins, somewhere in that range. I think, I wouldn't go 2, I think that's too low, but equally I think 4 is too high. So I think I'll go in the middle with 3. I think that makes sense, but...
I'm saying 2 based off the fact that I'm playing the cards of my theoretical of all the guys are there. As soon as a Chase or a Webb bows out, Eli's count instantly goes up, and we can't predict any of that at the moment. But in the world of me sitting with Coop as my number 1 choice, my Sexton is number 2, my Eli is 3rd. I hate to say I'm 2 wins, but I'm kind of basing, yeah, like I said, like a 2 or 3 off of that theory. And to counter or to bring that back around real quick, like I said, I have my solid 1, 2, 3. You're placing Webb and Chase as 1A, 1B, but I actually forgot to ask this: is Eli, whether you call it number 2 or 3, is he slotted directly behind
Yeah.
that, or do you have any? Okay.
He's 2, but if you want me to add a bit of a controversial take to this podcast, I could quite happily sit here and go, yep, Webb and Chase are my favourites. See you at Anaheim 1. Like, I could quite easily cut it there if I wanted to or if I needed to. But, stuff can happen, and Tomac and Roxon, who we'll get to next, I think do deserve some play here. But I do believe that Webb and Sexton are maybe light years above as far as preseason rankings go.
Are we ready to move on to?
Yeah, I've got shivers
Ken
down my
Roxon?
spine, and I can feel the fan base. We may
Coming
have
for
to
you.
turn comments off on
Torches.
this episode. So Roxon. So speaking, there's been a lot of talk of romanticizing on this podcast.
That's literally what's going to lead
am
into this. Yeah.
romanticizing the whole Roxon situation.
Mm-hmm.
I was on record on the media days as saying Jet's biggest attribute in 2026 will be the fact that he's got the leash change and stability. Well, that's now Roxon, which is exciting because I think Roxon does do well with that, maybe more so than others. And he was so good at WSX.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to think that he could battle for the championship. And he was kind of in the picture last year for a very long time.
Yeah.
Even, yes, he lost points in Tampa, but if you kind of like removed those points lost, he was still in the mix. I don't think he wins the championship just simply because I need to see it to believe it. Naturally, it's been a long time. We've never quite seen it. So I would just need to kind of I'm a visual learner, let's say. But there's a deep down inside of me, there's a big part of me that just doesn't quite want to rule it out. Yeah. And I think if Chase and Coop are my 1A and 1B, I think Eli and Kenny are my 2A and 2B. That would be a good representation of how I view Kenny.
How you started off was literally where I was going to start with. It is the term romanticize fits this perfectly. Again, if you look at each one of these guys' storyline, if they win the title and what it means, I would think this one of all 4 guys we're having this conversation about right now so far, the Roxon's would mean the most emotionally, not only to himself, but I think the entire fan base, the industry, whether you're a hardcore Kenny supporter or not. I think you'd have to admit that it would almost bring a tear to your eye to see him get it done. It would be, if he gets it done, I'm already imagining the feeling in the stadium when it happens. It would be like probably almost no other race I've been to, like on the level of like the kind of reaction you get like at a Motocross of Nations or something like that. It will be insane. To your point, the biggest thing that plays into his corner right now is that he is the most settled. He takes that crown from Jev. The fact that he's on the same program, he seems so happy. I agree with you heavily on. I was very happy with what I saw at WSX, and I think the best thing I saw is an attribute that Kenny, of course, has always had, but I feel like he cranked it back to 11 again, is those early lap pace. Like, it reminds me of, is it 2014 Kenny in Pro Motocross, where he could come for freaking 30th to first out of nowhere in 3 laps? Like, what he was doing at some of the WSX rounds at the beginning, God, I hope he brings that into the West Swing. I hope he starts there. I know, like, in the past, we've looked at, like, a Webb mentally defeating Kenny, but if Kenny comes out and goes up against the guys we're talking about and can lay down those kind of early race performances, that's pretty mentally, that's a great mental weapon, just being able to put down that kind of pace, something that they cannot respond to. And I think that's something, of course, that Jet has had against everybody the last couple of years, is when he wants to make a move happen, it's a bit mentally defeating how he can pull it off and pull a gap, and Kenny's the only one that can replicate that right now. And I think that's a huge, tool in the bag that I'm hoping he unleashes early on in the season. And similar, we said, like, I'm not worried about Webb over the course of the season, or like I'm waiting till later. Kenny, little of both. I mean, for him to be a title contender, I feel like he does need to come out swinging. But then I'm also, as we've always all been worried about, his health. If he does come out and lay down these performances early in the season, I'm still also going to long term be worried about, okay, how is he going to be over the long haul this season with this type of intensity?
Can he win with the field in its championship? Can he win with the field in its current state, or does he need help to get there in the form of one or two guys dropping out?
I mean, the simple answer is any of these guys could use help from somebody dropping out, Kenny the most, but I still don't think that's his path. I think he just needs to, yes, theoretically, if a bunch of guys get hurt, help, but I think it's still possible without it, but it's playing into the game. We said I think we just have to see that early pace. I think he needs to mentally defeat these guys and put on some hellacious performances out of the gate. And I think the path is there. It's a lot thinner and smaller than everybody else we're talking about in this group. That's why, in a sense, he's fourth in this conversation. I still think it's possible. And again, maybe I'm romanticizing it too much, but from what we've seen, the fact that it would be his first ever 450 Supercross championship, I want to believe.
Yeah, and Kenny, I mean, he has missed the end of the last two seasons, but for the most part, he's been very consistent, I feel. Last year especially so. I mean, looking at it now, Tampa aside, pre-injury, he was never out of the top 7, which is at least comparative to what we said about Chase and Coop. Maybe you'd want a few more podiums before he went out before he went out with injury. In his last 7 races, he had 1 podium, and that was a 3rd place, which is maybe consistent with Kenny's track record. So that would obviously be the concern that looms large. But I would like to think that he can seize the opportunity. I mean, can he do it in the field in its current state? Yes. Is it the slimmest of chances? Yes. But if one guy goes out, one thing breaks his way, I think the odds dramatically increase. And I think a Ken Roczen win would be, without doubt, by a million miles, the best possible outcome for the sport. I think it would get mainstream attention. I think everyone in the sport would be happy to see it. Suzuki would be back at the forefront. If Ken Roczen is your 2026 champion, everyone wins. There is no reason for a single person to complain in the sport. And that is the type of narrative that, again, everyone can romanticize quite easily. And of course, Roczen, using Fox Racing Gear, a loyal sponsor of this podcast this year and in 2026 as well.
There's one more thing I was going to mention about Kenny, the narrative, if he wins, that I think would be so amazing considering the circumstances is, chasing teams, Eli jumping onto a different platform, these riders that kind of move throughout their career, and the narrative, like I said, Kenny's doing it on a private team. Kenny would be doing it with the bike that hasn't changed in 10 years. Yes, they sink a lot of money into the development. I'm not blind to that. Nobody should be blind to that. But still, it would be so interesting to see that narrative also of somebody that just stayed committed to building what he wanted and how it paid off, and if that would change the perspective of some of his competition going forward.
Honestly, at one point during this Roczen conversation, I had goosebumps at the idea of Roczen doing it. Like, it's a beautiful scenario, but we haven't even turned a wheel on one track yet, let alone 17, so let's not get a little bit ahead of ourselves. On to Hunter Lawrence, which is, again, I think, so points of contention with the fans. One is Tomac, without doubt. Everyone, again, Tomac is the hero. You can't say a bad word. Number 2, where I feel like there's a big disconnect amongst the fans and whatever else, is Hunter. Because naturally, if this was a motocross discussion, he is your 1A and 1B with someone, or maybe just your 1. If this is SMX, the same thing. Supercross is a very, very different story. He's started 19 450 main events in his life. In contrast, Tomac is approaching his 200th. And in those 19 starts, Hunter has had 2 podiums, no wins. And therefore, and I don't feel like this is rude or downplaying his potential eventually, you've got to run before you can walk. And therefore, if he can leave 2026 with just 1 main event win, good on him, and that's a valuable step forward in his career. Now, poor Hunter, the only time that Jet seems to go out is Supercross, when Hunter is the one who has the most to gain outdoors and in SMX. Yeah. So I want to extend an olive branch of sympathy in that regard. Yeah. But I don't have him as a title contender. And again, not because I don't think he will be eventually, but it's too early.
I agree full-heartedly with you, and I've already had this conversation with a couple friends or people in the industry. Like, when title contenders have come up and shows, I have not said Hunter, and I've gotten a very 50-50 reaction for it. People that understand that I'm a big proponent of. I always say there's that kind of that path to get to there. You can't run before or you walk, like you say, and you don't just jump from typically from not winning a main to being a full title contender. Not to say that somehow Hunter couldn't pull it off, but in the same breath, yes, I think it's almost a disservice to label it that heavily because people might weigh that against him at the end of the championship, but still needs to win, still needs to be podium more consistently. This is a great opportunity for him, and I think this is a great year for him to build into that. And I also agree with you. Yes, if this was Pro Motocross or SMX, we'd be having a different conversation. That's the biggest one I've had people throw at me. Well, you see how close he was last year here and here. I'm like, yeah, but that still wasn't Supercross. That was Pro Motocross and SMX, and I can fully agree if we're having that conversation to label him as a title contender. But like you said, it just feels like it's a tick too early on Supercross, and this is the perfect year for him to elevate himself and get in that conversation consistently and be there to, I guess, maybe make the run the year after.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that even if Hunter wins Anaheim 1, which he can because his potential is of that degree, even if he wins Anaheim 1, that doesn't change my perspective now because he can win races at any chance in the 17 weekends, without doubt. But that still doesn't mean championship. If he were to pull off the 450 championship this year, I would look at akin to a rookie doing it because that's how early he is in his 450 Supercross development. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Hunter will be, maybe in 2027, a serious title contender and one who features heavily in podcasts such as this. But right now, I think it is just a little bit too soon. And I think that what he does in motocross and SMX does maybe cause everyone to view Supercross with rose-tinted glasses, let's say. Rose-tinted, of course, very relevant to the colour of his Honda. And also the colour of the Yoshimura logo, a loyal supporter of ours. You can bet on one thing, and that's that Hunter will probably have the most hole shots thanks to the power coming out of his fire-breathing dragon. Thank you to Yoshimura for their support of this podcast. So I think that's your big five. I really do. Fair? Is there anyone I'm like who needs to maybe go equal to Hunter? I don't think so.
Well, it's even tough when we say big five because we both agree Hunter is not in our non-title contender was labeled. So I kind of label it to big four because Hunter then gets in the race win conversation, which turns into the conversation we can have about a Malcolm, an AP, an Anderson. It's weird because he doesn't have a win, but it feels like Hunter is in between those groups a little bit because we're saying he has the potential to make the run if everything like he has the potential or will have the potential eventually. So I'm having a hard time even saying the big five because I have four, Hunter in a weird middle ground, and then the next part of the conversation.
Yeah, I have my big two, my bigger four, and then my five, and then I'm done. Like, that's kind of how I'd look at it. Like Hunter is in that upper echelon for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that isn't a title conversation. That's just a general ranking of riders. I think next behind Hunter, you'd have to go J-Coop. Or does Anderson come above J-Coop?
I struggle with this one because I kind of have a question mark that's J-Coop, Anderson, and Malcolm conversation, but I have as my circled one, Anderson.
Yeah.
This is tough because I'm going to harken back to you being a very, very big proponent of Anderson 2 years ago on this preview show.
This year, but
Was it this year?
2025, yeah.
It was, that's right.
And who can forget Anaheim 2? We saw it for 13 laps or so.
Yeah.
It's tough because even as I said J-Coop would be next, I kind of caught myself and had to quickly internal tussle over Anderson's achievements and where he is at this point in his career. World champion, of course. But no, I think you've got to think that J-Coop is ascending, and therefore you've got to think that he surpasses Anderson. I mean, even last year, I think J-Coop was, on average, generally more of a factor above Anderson, right? Or no?
Off the top of my head, yes. Like I say, Anderson had some peaks at the beginning before, of course, started to go away. But I guess the tough one is, me and you have both been very big proponents of Justin Cooper, and now I'm almost slipping the other way where I'm
Yep.
sitting here trying to decide. He has slowly been getting better, but like I said, Hunter shows the ability to jump the gap to the winner this next year. It's almost expected to win a race. I can't say I'm expecting Jay Coop to win a race. I think he can, but I'm not. I guess I also have the classic list of, how many guys we think is going to win this year, and I don't have him on it right now because I don't expect it. It can happen, but
Okay,
not
well, that was going to
predicting
be my two-part question. Again, can he win / will he win? Can he?
Yeah.
Will he? I'm no. No, I'm not no, but I'm like, eh. Can he? I'm like, I guess. Yeah. But I'm not like, yeah, he can, for sure. It's a tricky one because I don't know if the clock is expiring on Justin Cooper hype and therefore this is a make or break season for him. If this is one that should be analysed to the nth degree, I don't know. I don't know how to even view his career. It's quiet. It matches his personality. It's effective to a degree, but not as effective as it arguably should be at this point. So I don't know. What would even be a good season for Jay Coop? Probably 5 podiums? I don't know. That seems like not enough.
I kind of agree because I don't want to see him become static in terms of his progression. And it's hard because on one hand, I've quite commonly done this. I felt like we did it a lot last year. Is we lump him and Hunter into a very comparable zone of what they're capable of. Yes, we know probably Hunter has higher peaks, but I felt like the last year or two we were comparing them more. Where we're talking about Hunter right now is more, hey, he's better in Pro Motocross and SMX, but he's won there, so at least you can say that going Supercross. We don't even have that with Jay Coop, where a lot of people labeled him as a better outdoor guy, and we don't have that 450 win. So that's it. I guess that's the next question I have for you is, what is Justin Cooper to you? A better Supercross or a better Pro Motocross rider?
Well, before that, you said you don't want to see his progression stall. I would argue it already has.
Yes.
And we need to
I kind of
break
agree.
that ice and unfreeze the progress and take it forward once more. I don't know. Again, nothing that Justin Cooper does necessarily resonates, which again is an issue, and I think it is partly a reflection of his demeanor. I mean, ultimately, he's the number 2 behind Coop, so as far as number 2 riders go, he does a very good job. But I just think that it's time to maybe realise for what we maybe, again, romanticised what Jay Coop could be on a 450, we're just not quite going to get there as far as the pinnacle. Now, will he eventually win races? Yes. Could it happen in 26? Yes. But will he battle for a championship? I don't know. Will he win 15 in his career? I don't know. That is kind of where I'm at with Jay Coop at this point. Jury is out.
And this has come back to you're asking me about, where you place him, because this is why I lean Anderson above him. So can Jay Coop win a race in 26? Yes. Will he? I don't believe so. I think Anderson can and will win at least one race.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. Anderson has not won since 2022. And do you think he gets back on top in 26?
I think one comes, yes.
But
maybe
why-
I'm romanticizing again. I'm romanticizing.
Yeah, this is we're veering out of
We're trying to be
romanticizing
realistic. Yeah,
and
we're
into
trying
drugs,
to veer out of it.
at this point.
Hey,
okay, so
he's your world Supercross champion.
answer me this. It hasn't come since 2022, so why would it come in 26?
I think like even what we saw though at the beginning of the Cowie, I think a fresh start, a fresh program. I think the talent is still completely there. I just kind of have this belief that a reset form is enough to get us through. And I think we've already seen, I said before, like, I don't get me wrong. On one hand, I say the world Supercross champion joke slightly as a tongue-in-cheek comment. Like, it's great he won it, but it doesn't mean that much at the end of the day in terms of what will happen. However, what I saw during those races, there were times where somebody go, well, he was battling with Christian Craig and Joey Savacci. Yes, but also the moments he was pushed, I saw the glimpses of Jason that has been a champion, has won a title. The Jason that has won races exists on that bike. It exists in there.
Yep, I would agree. And let's not forget, because I just looked this up and was surprised myself, he had 3 podiums in the first 5 rounds in 25. It wasn't just Anaheim 2. which is a surprise. That doesn't sit with me at all. So maybe he starts strong. I think fair to say that if he wins, it comes early thanks to West Coast WSX momentum, maybe early carnage and adaptation for his rivals, right?
That's kind of, I'm leaning it as very early. Yeah, West Coast swing. I kind of expect it. If we get past West Coast swing and it's, unless there's an obvious trend in his results, I don't, of course, see it later in the year, but I'm fully waiting for an Anderson win in the first 6. And again, I place that as just the potential, and the recent performances kind of give me more of that feeling than J Coop. Like J Coops could happen at any point in the season, but I'm very confident that I could see an Anderson one early.
J Coop is an Andrew Short. That is where we're at.
Pretty fair, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like, he can win. Maybe needs a first turn crash, maybe needs something like that, but he can win. It just probably won't happen without help. I think that's a nice comparison at this point. But this is an easier question. Who finishes higher in points, Anderson or J Coop?
J Coop.
Yes, that's what I felt
That's
the answer would be. And of course, J Coop making use of the ultra competitive championship winning YZ450F. You can head down to your local dealer or wherever you do your bike shopping nowadays and get your own Yamaha steed. They cater to all with their wide array of options, blue options. They'll stop you feeling blue as soon as you get on a very good Yamaha machine. Thank you to them for their support. So should we end this episode with Malcolm, or do we leave Malcolm? We've got categories.
Well, here's the tough one. If you bring up Malcolm, do you have to bring up Aaron? Because I feel like I'm very 1A, 1B with them right now. Or sorry, 1A, 1B. You know what I mean.
AP is in. I'm not doing AP this week. I think this is the next episode. I'm quite adamant that we. I don't know where I sit with AP. That'll be a new conversation.
Yeah.
So should we just do our categories and leave?
Yes, and then I have two kind of like follow-up questions for you. I think one of them's in your category. The one actually is, of the title contenders, talking about J Coop being an excellent second guy. What team or what of the title contenders has the strongest help? Like, who has the strongest backing help that could potentially swing the tide in late season if they're battling? Like somebody that can actually get in between it. Who do you feel the most confident that can look over and go, okay, when shit gets real, this guy might be able to help me pull this off. He might be able to get between me and the guy I'm trying to beat.
Webb, without doubt.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately quite contradictory of what we just said.
Right? That's why I thought it was kind of entertaining.
I mean, to be honest, I almost went Roxon just because Anderson wouldn't be afraid to get in there.
That's true. And could you see Anderson being the kind of guy, not that he would ever do something terrible, but like, hey, Hep believed in you, he loves being there, etc. Like, does he, hell, I'll do something to help this team win something. Like, I mean,
yeah, I could see this.
He kind of gives me that vibe where he's down to help his team, in the sense of, like I said, another dirt, but like, hey, if he's in a position where he could hold up, we're a couple rounds to go, Kenny's in this, he's got an Eli or a Coop behind him or something, he'll ride a wide bike. I think he would do his best to help put a number 1 plate on a Suzuki.
And your other question?
I think it's in your categories, but how many people do we think see win this season? Who will they be?
Well, let's kick it off with that. Let's do that.
Okay.
I think we will have 5 winners. And they are my 5. Which is...
I have... Oh, wow. Going 5 only.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I could have gone lower.
Yeah.
If you pushed me, I would have gone lower instead of higher.
What is the old time average? About 5 has been the last like 20 years, and then last year was the record.
Yep, or tied the record. And just to be clear, for reference, if Jet was healthy, I was going to go 3 with just Jet, Chase, and Coop. But now that Jet's out, it does open it up, and there's a lot more opportunity in the world.
Okay, I'm sitting at 6.
So
Webb. Sexton. Oh, sorry. You want to guess?
No, I was going to say. Well, no, I was going to say. What are your names?
Webb, Sexton, Tomac, Roxon, Anderson, Hunter Lawrence.
Oh, so Anderson again. Not one since 2022.
I have one race.
He's not won since Jet Lawrence was a 250 rider.
Mm-hmm.
He's not
Jen
won.
Lawrence isn't here.
The world was different in 22. What else? Tomac was in his first year on a Yamaha. Now Tomac's in his first year on a KTM.
KTM. Chase Sexton still on a Honda?
Yes, a lifetime ago. Okay, so we did this, and just to be clear, the categories will pertain to the riders mentioned in this show. So the next episode, the next podcast, is not really an episode, we will do the same categories pertaining to the riders in that podcast. So we've kind of split it quite evenly. This one only pertains to this episode. Championship favourite, we did it, but just to be clear.
Webb.
Okay, I'm changing to Sexton.
It just has to be different.
I said
did you do that just to be different, or did you convince yourself over the course of the podcast?
I said to be clear, and then they made it very unclear by going with a different name. No, just to be different. And ultimately, I do think he wins the most races. So let's just say that works out. Which we just did number of race winners, so we don't need to do that. Bold prediction from this group. Go crazy with this. We're not no one's going to cry about it. Bold prediction.
Oh, my Anderson win apparently wasn't bold enough.
No, that wasn't bold enough. That's boring because that's too
boring.
That's too like.
That's boring.
I think everyone's going to win a race.
Bold prediction. You got to give me a second if you want to throw yours out there.
Ken Roczen wins. Chase Sexton wins the most races. Ken Roczen wins the second most races.
That's somewhat bold, but very believable.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's
Kind of
very
had to convince
believable,
myself as I was
especially if it
saying it.
happens early. I feel like, again, if we go off of an early season push from Kenny, like he could very quickly rack up a couple, which would help.
And I'm thinking in my head, I've got like Roczen wins 4, Webb wins 4, Tomac wins 3, Hunter wins 1. You know, like that's how it shakes out in my head.
Bold prediction?
Yep. Just take your time. 2026 is still a week or so away, so we can, sit here for as long as we need.
I'm not saying this because I believe it, but I'm going to go bold. I'm going to say this is Tomac's final season racing.
Okay, the Anderson one was bolder, but we'll take it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll take it.
I thought that was it. Okay.
Biggest disappointment from this group of riders. I've got mine.
You're going to say Tomac, aren't you?
No, are you crazy? What do you think I am? Do you think I got a suicide wish or a death wish or whatever they say?
Are you saying you won't say it because you're afraid of what will happen to you?
Pleading the fifth.
You're pleading the fifth. Wow.
I think that it will be J-Coop, but because he doesn't take that next step and we all expect and wait for it. But ultimately, at the end of the 17 rounds, he has a couple of podiums, a lot of top fives, fifth in points, and we're just kind of like, yep, that's J-Coop.
My biggest disappointment bold prediction will be Sexton not winning the title and it not being Webb that beats him. Losing the title to Tomac or to Roczen.
That's your disappointment. That should be your bold prediction. What?
Oh, there we go. There's my bold prediction.
But that's also your disappointment?
Just if he loses this title at all.
Okay, yeah. I think we kind of got in the weeds there with the semantics of that, but he's going to lose the title, but not to Webb and to a rider with more than 2 wheels. It was that sort of, we just kept building the lore.
We named 2. The only 2 others that are in the conversation. No, in general.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I say that in the sense of, I don't think it's a disappointment if Tomac doesn't have a great season on the KTM. It's just such a 50-50 toss. Kenny still getting 2 wins is fine as usual. It can go better, it can go worse. Webb not defending the title isn't a disappointment. Like, he's never defended before. I feel like Chase definitely is in the corner where it's easiest for him to have a disappointing performance of the absolute top tier that we're talking about.
I think this is going to be the hardest category of them all. From this group, once again, most improved. I think that the options are Chase, because you could say he fixes a lot of the mistakes and he's much more well-rounded. I think you could say Kenny, because he's won 1 race for the last couple of years, so winning a lot more and, being more of a factor. Anderson, I guess you could say, going along with he's going to win a race. I think those are... No, that's dumb. The most obvious one. Hunter takes a step, gets multiple podiums, gets a win, and he takes the step that we would have liked to have seen from J-Coop. Hunter is going to be your most improved. This will be the season that he transitions into a title contender for 27.
I agree with that because everybody else you named off before that to truly be, you're saying most improved because you're almost a couple of them. You're going, well, they've been here in the past, they're not there. So by improving some of them, and like in Kenny's case, is just getting back to where he was as a peak title contender. Anderson, a couple of those are almost return to forms. Where Hunter, I agree with you on the Hunter one.
You could argue that it would be an improvement for Tomac to get back because he's won one race for the last 2 years. So you could argue that it would be take out improvement, replace it with step forward from previous year, previous 2 years. You could argue Tomac getting back to multiple race wins, whatever else. No, I think that's quite a sound and easy prediction is Hunter. But anyway, before we go, next episode, of course, we will talk about Malcolm, to be clear. AP, the Ducati boys, the Beta boys, the Triumph boys, Marchbanks, Prado, completely forgot about Prado. Prado, I feel like will fill a lot of those categories on the next episode. And Prado, of course, uses Decal Works, a loyal supporter of ours, and also Motorex. Motorex, known for high-quality engine oils, also has an entire line of clean, care, and lube products to keep your bike running strong and looking great. Maintenance made easy with race-proven Motorex, clean, care, and lube products. Right, I think we're done with this first act of our 2026 Monster Energy AMA Supercross preview. Anaheim 1, as we record this, is a little over 2 weeks away. Very exciting. It's getting ever closer. As I said, next time we will look into the second tier, let's say, of the 450 class. And then after that, we will be doing a 250 preview because it's quite clear who's going to be racing what coast and whatever else. So thank you for listening. Stick with us in the run-up to Anaheim 1. Thank you to our loyal partners as well. And we will see you real soon.